So biodiversity pattern means how the biodiversity is distributed in a particular region. Latitudinal gradients explains that the distribution of species varies as we move from the equator to the polar region. Two types of vegetation we can find in the montane. That is, we can find dense forest at certain height, and at certain elevation we can find grasslands and shrublands. Hello everyone, a warm welcome to today's session on Environmental Studies for second semester B.Ca. I'm Dr. Divya, Environmental Studies faculty, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, Temple of Excellence, Mysuru. So in today's session, let us continue with studying Unit 4 of Biodiversity and Conservation. So in this session, we shall concentrate on the different patterns of biodiversity, and also we shall learn about the biodiversity hotspots in the whole world. So to begin with, let us know the biodiversity patterns. So biodiversity pattern means how the biodiversity is distributed in a particular region. So these patterns are mainly studied in three forms, that is latitude, altitude and species area relationship. So what are these? Let's study one by one. So talking about latitudinal gradients. So gradation means it is from one level, you have the second level, the third level. So these are called as gradations, right? So similarly here, latitudinal gradations means we know that the earth is made up of the equator, or it is divided into the latitudes such as the equator, the tropics. So we have the equator exactly at the center, then comes the tropics towards the north as well as towards the south. We have the tropics, then comes the temperate region. So temperate region again here towards the north, towards the south. Temperate region, and the last one is the polar. That is the polar region, the North Pole, and we have the here again the South Pole. So this is how the earth is divided, and the vegetation, be it the flora as well as the fauna, that is the plants and the animals, their diversity varies from one region to, or in one latitude to the other. So this is about latitudinal gradients. So latitudinal gradients explains that the distribution of species varies as we move from the equator to the polar region. So in the equator, from the equator to the tropics, both towards the north and the south, the plant and animal species is more. When we move towards the temperate, it is the diversity of plants and animal species is less when compared to the tropics. And as we move towards the polar region, that is the North Pole and the South Pole, which is always ice capped with glaciers and all that, there the diversity of species is very, very less. So that is how, as we move from the equator towards the North Pole and towards the South Pole, the diversity of the species tends to vary. That is nothing but latitudinal gradation or latitudinal gradient. So therefore, species diversity can be studied, or biodiversity can be studied based on this latitudinal gradient. So as I told you, the distribution of species is rich in the tropical region, which is surrounding the equator, that has a latitudinal range of 23.5 degree north to 23.5 degree south. So here 23.5 degree north to 23 point, here again, so this is south to 23.5 degree north. So that is the tropics lying on either side of the equator, where the species diversity or distribution is quite rich, and it decreases as we move towards the temperate region, that is the latitudinal range of 66.5 degree north to 66.5 degree south. So here we have temperate region 66.5 degree south to 66.5 degree north. So there, when compared to the tropics, there also species distribution is there, but the number of species distribution tends to vary and it is much lesser when compared to the tropical region and less towards the poles, that is 90° north to 90° south. So, in the polar region, that is 90° north to 90° south, it is completely very minimal, the species distribution. So, this is what is said in the latitudinal gradient. So, why this species distribution varies when we move from the equator towards the polar region? It is mainly because of the climatic condition. So, here tropical regions, they are very good in climate, wherein they have all the climate, be it summer, winter, rainfall in moderate. Therefore, the diversity of species is very more. And not just that, tropical region is said to receive most of the sunlight throughout the year when compared to the temperate or the polar region. So, therefore, more amount of sunlight means more number of plants. More number of plants means more number of herbivores. Therefore, more number of herbivores means more number of carnivores. So, that is why tropical regions which lie on either side of the equator has more number of animal species, whereas in temperate, sometimes what happens, rainy seasons are extreme, summers are extreme. So, that is why the species diversity is lesser when compared to that of the tropical region. And polar region, though we know that here it is completely snow-capped. Every time the amount of sunlight that they receive is also quite minimal, and also it is every time covered with snow, which doesn't promote plant growth. Therefore, here only the carnivorous animals tend to live in majority. So, that is why the species diversity is quite very less in the polar region. So, therefore, climatic conditions, since it varies in different latitudes, it is the reason why the latitudinal biodiversity results in. Next, talking about altitudinal biodiversity. So, when I say altitudinal, means it is something to do with the heights, right? So, we have the ground level, the sea level and all that. So, it's something to do with heights. So, the species diversity pattern varies with altitude or with elevation, or in other terms, we can use varies with height. So, here elevations are considered when, wherever or wherein high elevations in tropical regions have greater biodiversity than high elevations in the temperate region. Here also, based on the elevation, the diversity of the species tend to vary. So, the altitudinal zones are usually divided as the lowlands, the montane, the alpine and the nival. As you can see here, we have the lowland, which is rich in species diversity. Next to it is the montane. Then we have the subalpine, the alpine and the nival. So, based on the height. So, there we were talking based on the latitude, that is the equator, the tropics, the temperate and the polar region, right? Here we are talking based on the height. So, based on the altitude or based on the elevations, the species diversity tends to change. So, talking about lowland. So, lowland zone, which is actually near or below the sea level. So, we all are living in the lowland zone, right? So, there are no mountains or large hills in this particular zone, and the deposition of lava, water, wind and soil erosion have resulted in the formation of lowland, and hence these regions are very rich, that is rich in soil content, wherein the soil of this region is very fertile, and hence it is suitable for the growth of a number of plants, including for agriculture purposes when compared to other elevations. So, therefore, human habitation is more in the lowland when compared to higher elevations, and also agriculture, farming and all that is more in the lowland when compared to the higher elevations. Lowland, that is the tropical climate in the lowland. If the lowland is in the tropics, so in those countries which are situated in the tropics, then they will have a very rich biodiversity because they have a tropical rainforest which grows on the plains at elevations less than 1000 meters. So, the lowland, it is at an elevation of less than 1000 meter, somewhere around 1000 meter, that is less than 1000 meter the elevation. So, this is about the lowland. So next, moving further, we'll talk about the montane region. So montane region is nothing but, as the word suggests, it is the slopes of the mountain. So montane region lies above, at a higher elevation above the lowland or above the sea level, and it contains the slope of the mountain. So here species diversity varies at different elevation in the montane. So say for example, there are dense forests at moderate elevation of the mountain. So where the slope is about 1500 to 2500 meters, the area or the mountain is filled with rich dense forest, and as the temperature is moderate, having very high rainfall at higher elevations of 2400 to 3300 meters, the dense vegetation will change to grasslands and shrublands. So I told you the species diversity varies within the mountain itself, because mountain is nothing but the slope of the hill, right? So here vegetation, when we take a height of the mountain or as 1500 to 2500 meters, up till that height the mountain will have very dense forest. But at a height of 2400 to 3300 meters, their vegetation changes from a dense forest vegetation to a grassland and a shrubland vegetation, because the climate will become quite harsh with low temperature and high wind. So therefore, two types of vegetation we can find in the mountain. That is, we can find dense forest at certain height, and at certain elevation we can find grasslands and shrublands. And hence, due to this peculiar climatic shift with the elevations in the mountain, they house or they are a home for a large number of endemic species. So what do we mean by endemic species? Endemic species are nothing but which are found in a particular region, and apart from that region, they are not found anywhere else in the world. So such endemic species live in the mountain because of the diversity in the climate in different elevations of the mountain. So mountain is the next level of biodiversity after the lowland. Next, talking about the subalpine. So subalpine, it occupies the elevation just below the tree line between 9000 to 11,000 feet. So above the mountain, that is somewhere 9000 to 11,000 feet, up till that the subalpine vegetation occurs. That is, alpine means completely of coniferous trees. Just below that, where the coniferous trees starts. So coniferous trees means like pines and all that, they are conifers, right? So where they will start, just at that point, there is one region called as the alpine region of biodiversity, and it mainly consists of trees such as the spruce and the fir trees. They also contain meadows, that is grasslands, and they contain trees in the subalpine zone, and these trees are always crooked and stunted in growth. So why are these trees always crooked and stunted in growth? Why? Because what did I tell you? Where exactly just below the tree line this region is present. So therefore, the trees that are growing above this region will prevent the entry of the sunlight to the subalpine region. Therefore, the trees growing in the subalpine region have to grow in such directions wherein they receive the sunlight. Wherever gap is there where they receive the sunlight, they'll have to grow. So that is why they appear to be crooked in nature, crooked and stunted growth. So subalpine forests are usually found in eastern Himalayas, the western Himalayas, and the Hengduan mountains of Asia. So these regions have the subalpine biodiversity, and they are filled with trees such as the fir and the spruce. So this is about the subalpine zone of biodiversity according to the altitudinal gradient. Next is the alpine zone. So these are the regions that occur above the tree line. Because they occur above the tree line, they receive ample amount or enough amount of sunlight. So alpine ecosystem provides important goods and services to animals, plants, and also to human beings, especially because these areas, they contain a lot of fresh water, because many of the rivers have said to be originated from the alpine region, because they are somewhat snow covered also. So that is the reason for this. And rivers, they are also one of the important goods and services which the ecosystem provides to the people. So about important goods and services of ecosystem, you have a separate topic for that in a particular unit. There you will study in detail. So here, when I say important goods and services, here one best example is the rivers. So rivers, most of the rivers, they rise from the alpine, and they are usually found in almost all the mountain ranges of the world, including the Andes, the Alps and the Rocky Mountains, and they lie between an altitude of about 10,000 feet, and it is this place where usually the snow line of the mountain begins. That is, the snow region of the mountain usually starts from the alpine region, because it is not completely covered by the snow. Vegetation is quite good, wherein they have a lot of pine trees that are growing there, and because it is the region where the snow actually starts, it is also a place for the formation of a different number of rivers which flow towards the lowland, and therefore they run as rivers in the lowland. So this is about the alpine region. So next, talking about the Nival region. So Nival is the highest vegetation zone which is found in the alpine region above 3000 meter. After the alpine region, somewhere above 3000 meter of the alpine region, we have the Nival region. So they are characterized by vegetation that these regions are quite rocky. Means they are made up of stones and boulders and all that. So that is why they have vegetations which are capable of living or surviving in the rocks and gravel. And the plants here require high exposure to sunlight if they have to grow properly in this region. Otherwise, if they don't receive enough amount of sunlight, they tend to die and they don't grow properly. So in spite of the conditions for plant development in the Nival zone, though it is unfavorable, so though the climatic condition is not that favorable for plant development, there are a lot of, that is more than 100 species of flowering plants growing there, such as the buttercups, the microscopic plants such as snow algae. Microscopic means very, very minute plants such as the snow algae, some of the lichens, etc. All these tend to grow in the Nival region. So Nival regions are usually present above the alpine region. That is 3000 meters above the alpine region is the Nival region, and they are usually rocky and also somewhat snow covered, and the temperature is not that favorable for the growth of the plants, but in spite of that, they have a few species of plants which are growing there in abundance. So this is about the Nival, which was the last zone. So next, talking about the global biodiversity hotspots in the whole world. So here we have a global biodiversity hotspot, that is in Africa. There are different regions which are considered to be the biodiversity hotspot. Why do they consider it a biodiversity hotspot? Because a lot of endangered species will be growing there, and also a lot of endemic species will be present there, which are found nowhere else in the world. So that is why they are considered as biological or biodiversity hotspots. So in Africa, we have the Eastern Afro-montane, the Guinean forest of Western Africa, Horn of Africa, Madagascar and the Indian Ocean Islands, then Maputo land, Podo land, Albany hotspots, then succulent Karo, then East Melanesians Island, then South Africa's Cape floristic hotspot, coastal forest of Eastern Africa. So all these are the different biodiversity hotspots in Africa. And in Asia and Australia, there is the Himalayan hotspot, then the Eastern Himalayas, Japan biodiversity hotspot, mountains of Southwest China, New Caledonia and New Zealand biodiversity hotspot. So these two, New Caledonia and New Zealand biodiversity hotspot, comes under Australian biodiversity hotspots. Next, continuing, we have the Philippine biodiversity hotspot, the Western Sunda, that comes in Indonesia, Maldives and Brunei. Then we have valleys in Eastern Indonesia, then the Western Ghats of India and islands of Sri Lanka. They are one of the highly biodiversity hotspots because Western Ghats harbors thousands of varieties or lacks together variety of plant species and animal species which are yet to be discovered, and they are found nowhere else in the world. Then we have Polynesia and Micronesian islands complex including the Hawaii Islands, then the Southwestern Australia biodiversity hotspot. Next, talking about the hotspots, biodiversity hotspot in North and Central America. So, in North and Central America, there is California Floristic Province, Caribbean Island hotspot, Mondrian pine oak woodlands of the USA and Mexico border, then the Mesoamerican forest. So, these are the biodiversity hotspots which are found in North and Central America. Next, in South America, there is Brazil's Cerrado, then Chilean winter rainfall forest, then Tums Choco Magdalena biodiversity hotspot, then tropical Andes and the Atlantic forest. So, next in Europe and Central Asia, there is Caucasus region, the Iran Anatolia region, the Mediterranean basin and its eastern coastal region, then the mountains of Central Asia. So, this was about the session wherein we studied about the biodiversity hotspots, and in this particular session we had studied the various biodiversity, that is how the biodiversity is actually measured, and it is actually noted down or measured based on 3 patterns, that is biodiversity patterns, wherein there is the altitudinal gradient, the latitudinal gradient and the species area richness. So, latitude and altitudinal, the 2 of them are very important because they are given in your syllabus. So, I have explained to you about that, and also we learnt about the different biodiversity hotspots that are there around the globe. So, this was about the session. In the next coming session, let us learn about India has a mega biodiversity nation. Why is India a mega biodiversity nation? What are the biodiversity hotspots, especially in India? Of course, in this session, we learnt about the Himalayan region and all that, but it was, I had put it under Asia, right? But particularly in India, what are the major biodiversity hotspots we shall study here, and also we shall study which are the endangered and the endemic species of India. Endangered species means those which are at the verge of extinction or becoming extinct in the near future. And endemic species is nothing but those which are found in a particular region, but they are not found anywhere else in the world. So, what are the endangered and endemic species of India? All that we shall complete in the next coming session. So, I hope you understood this session well. We shall meet again in the coming session with these 2 topics. Thank you.